Hello, everyone. Boy, oh boy, did this situation come out of nowhere or what? Wow, I haven't even started yet and I'm already kind of losing my voice. Man, I was not expecting to be talking about The Last of Us Part 2 until Final Fantasy VII came out, and that was the big game that everyone is focusing on, the big game that everyone was hyping up, the big PlayStation game in the recent future. That was the one that everyone was trying to hype up, and not a lot of people were talking about The Last of Us Part 2, and as a result, I wasn't paying much attention to it. Everything we've seen about this game so far seems to have been before this seems to have been a disaster, but this situation with this entire series of tweets is very illuminating. It's very eye-opening to the current state of Naughty Dog and the current state of PlayStation, and most of all, the current state of The Last of Us Part 2. Primarily what the developers focuses on, what they're doing, what their goals are, and a little bit of insight into their work culture. This is so interesting, in fact, that I knew immediately that I needed an entire live stream to talk about this, because so many people, this is yet another example of a crunch getting in the way of video games reaching their fullest potential, or more specifically, it feels like corporations are using and abusing their employees and then tossing them aside when they're no longer useful. This is a trend we've been noticing with lots of Western third parties in particular. Pretty much every major Western third party I can think of has a history of doing this. Rockstar was the big one last year. There were talks of WB going through similar situations, and now we have confirmation that Naughty Dog, the naughty gods of the gaming industry, lots of people, Naughty Dog, right? The most overrated game studio in the world right now. The studio behind shit like The Last of Us, Uncharted 4, and not a whole lot else. That studio, seriously, they haven't made anything else this decade. They made like 3 games in the tens, like Uncharted 3, which a bunch of people didn't like, The Last of Us, and Uncharted 4. Like, they really, really don't have a very good track record. But they've been the most overhyped game studio, I would say, in the past decade. The Last of Us was the example, right? The defining example, probably the reason I am so dead set against this blind journalistic praise towards PlayStation exclusives, because The Last of Us simply is not that great of a game, and yet it was treated as if it was a masterpiece on par with classics like Super Mario Bros., Ocarina of Time, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VI, Super Smash Bros. Melee. Like, I'm just tossing out all these, like, extremely popular, extremely well-regarded games here. Like, the greatest games of all time. Like, The Last of Us was being hyped as one of the greatest games it ever made back when it first came out. But it was a facade. It was a lie. It was Sony desperately trying to present themselves as being top of the line developers, when that really, really isn't true. And this situation with Naughty Dog and its development studios, this series of tweets from Jonathan Cooper go into a lot of insight as to what the problem actually is. There are I'm sure there's a lot more going on than just this, and there's some things going on between the lines that we do need to talk about. But for the general idea, we will examine through these tweets and then maybe look at the reset era damage control and the backlash, because this has generated a significant amount of backlash. This might actually lead to be an this might actually lead to this might actually be responsible for The Last of Us Part 2 not getting nearly as high of a Metacritic score as its predecessor, similar to Red Dead Redemption 2, and not nearly as well regarded as the original. All right, so let's read these tweets. When I left Naughty Dog late last year, they threatened to withhold my final paycheck until I signed additional paperwork stating I wouldn't share their production practices. They finally relented when I assured them that was most likely illegal. Very interesting way to start off this tweet. Like, you can tell this guy is angry, he's frustrated, he's been abused, he he fully appreciates the severity of what Naughty Dog is doing to their developers, how overworked they are, how stressed they are, how abused they are, how underpaid they are. He was there, he understands, and he's there to try and put a damper on what Naughty Dog is doing with The Last of Us Part 2, right? He is there to try and cancel, right, The Last of Us Part 2. There's no other way to put it. Cancel, uh, bring cancel culture in onto Naughty Dog and The Last of Us. Like, he wants certain people at Naughty Dog to be punished for what they've done. So that's kind of an interesting first tweet, and it goes on rather extensively. The truth is, I have no awful crunch tale. The story animators, as we were known, were averaging 46 hours a week when I left, and I personally never went over 55. The story team is super organized, and we reacted to whatever was thrown at us. That's not to say others weren't suffering. So yeah, for the demo shown last September, the gameplay animators crunched more than I've ever seen and required weeks of recovery afterward. One good friend of mine was hospitalized at that time due to overwork. He still had over half a year to go. There have been others since. The reason I left is because I only want to work with the best. You better sign on with Nintendo for that. That is no longer Naughty Dog. I could have told you that years ago. It never was Naughty Dog, you hack. Their reputation for crunch within LA is so bad, it was near impossible to hire seasoned contract game animators to close out the project. As such, we loaded up on film animators. That's really funny to me for another reason that's unrelated to the topic of this video. Naughty Dog basically want to make movies. It's been an open secret for years, and this seems to be confirming it. That The Last of Us Part 2 is basically just produced as a movie with lame gameplay segments interspersed in between cutscenes. While super talented, they lacked the technical design know-how to assemble scenes. Similarly, the design team ballooned with juniors to make up for the attrition of key roles. Every aspect of finishing this game took much longer due to the lack of game experience on the team. So, this was made by less experienced people who had no idea what they were doing, a good portion of which probably did not work on the original. So as a result, we're going to see a very a mixed bag here. It's going to be more of the same from the original or worse. Going by that statement. Don't get me wrong, these kids are mostly awesome, and the best were great. It's just when the junior-senior ratio is so out of balance, things can really grind, and more time is spent training than actually working. Make sure... Contract work is a huge part of the LA ecosystem to ship large games. Unlike game design, there is a thriving animation industry here, and seasoned animators can often choose their projects. Most of the contract story animators quit last year. Those that don't can be at ND for 2-3 projects, and while paid overtime, never receive benefits or the security of a full-time gig. This is the way the industry is moving, so workers need more protection rather than the carrot of a full-time job one day. There are ND stories worth in this, but like everything on my Twitter, I'm focusing on animation. Yeah, so this is an animator, so he's not really talking about like other branches of the company. He might not even be aware of what's going on in other aspects of the. Yep. So, a very interesting last tweet here. Ultimately, Naughty Dog's linear games have a formula and they focus test the shit out of them. While talented, their success is due in large part to Sony's deep pockets funding delays rather than skill alone. Wow. 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 Outright admitting it. He is outright admitting this. The only reason Naughty Dog can succeed is because of Sony funding everything they do. Sony's backing is the only reason that Naughty Dog can do what they've been doing. Like, that is the secret behind Naughty Dog's success. Sony, this huge corporation, funding everything they do and paying off game journalists and doing all of this crazy shit. And oh wait, what's this? Look, I actually got a lot of likes on this one. Sounds like if you want genre defining games, you gotta sacrifice damage control. The fact that Sony delayed it again shows that they care about the final product. I really don't care about disgruntled ex-employees crying afterwards. You need to act, Neil and Sony. Funny how Nintendo... Wow, this guy is a based motherfucker. Funny how Nintendo pumped out Breath of the Wild without anything like this happening. Yeah, so... May 29th is the launch day. So, Naughty Gods has to be the most embarrassing nickname for a developer I've ever heard in my life. We've seen this happen with Death Stranding. We've seen this happen with Final Fantasy VII R. We've seen this happen with, recently with Horizon Zero Dawn. If The Last of Us Part 2 was not a PlayStation exclusive, none of these people would give a shit. Like, none of these people would care. None of them would cover it. None of them would, like, really care, would really talk about it at all. It would be another generic movie game. And it is. That's exactly what it is. But it's PlayStation exclusive. It's made by Naughty Gods. So, oof. Oh boy, I wonder how Sony peasants will spin and damage control this. Base Baron Black. Naughty Dog is known for the worst crunch in the industry. I worked 46 hours a week. So much hate. Or what does SMH even stand for? I work 60, and that's every week. 100 during the summer months. You always see people do this. Like, oh, they're not overworked. I work like hundreds of hours. Like, really? Really? 100 hours a week? Like, what industry? That would be like over 3 days. Like, over 4 days. Like, wait. 100-hour weeks. Yeah. How do people work 180 hours weeks? Wait a minute. Shit. What jobs work 100-hour weeks? I don't even know. Like, let's see. Yeah, whatever. Okay. It usually doesn't last more than a few weeks. Yeah, I guess you could handle that for a couple of weeks, but these are projects that last months and months and months. This motherfucker is completely downplaying the fact that developing games takes years. Yep. So, the damage control is coming in. Lots of people are upset about this. We're definitely going to be examining the arguments on both sides. I think Reset Era is probably the best place to look at this, considering I think it has people on both sides. People who want to support Naughty Dog because it's woke, and people who want to be against them because it's woke. So, workers' rights versus feminists, basically. So we're gonna see how that turns out. For the record, I am on team workers' rights. I do feel as if most third-party developers do indeed abuse. Most people in the tech industry actually do indeed abuse their employees, and that needs to be acknowledged more. And these people. There needs to be more pressure on these developers. Don't let them tell you that, like, oh, the game wouldn't be as good if they didn't do this. That is complete crap. As we've seen, as I demonstrated earlier with my massive big dick tweet, Nintendo makes better games all the time with no crunch. Breath of the Wild did not have a crunch. Iwata personally came out, gave an interview in which he said, Nintendo doesn't do crunch. We don't lay people off because we know that puts unnecessary pressure on the employees. This is another example of why Nintendo is so far ahead of the rest of the industry, in which they actually treat their talent with respect. Maybe a bit too much respect in Platinum Games' case, but that might just be an awkward situation in general. We don't know the whole story behind that, but my opinion is that Nintendo should have cracked down on Platinum Games a long time ago. But my point is, Nintendo employees work a typical work week. They have benefits. They don't bring on like these contractors, or they don't do the things that Naughty Dog does like regularly. Do you know what I mean? Like it's a reasonable company, and I think Nintendo's the happiness of Nintendo's employees is actually pretty high for a Japanese company. Let's see. Appreciate the story, but you can't make a blanket statement that a more senior team would have had the game out sooner. In theory, it's true, but it's not a guarantee. Damage control. I need to respond to all of this because it's just ridiculous how these people are dick sucking a corporation. Like, that's what it comes down to. They are damage controlling what PlayStation has done. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. Crunch oftentimes makes games take even longer to finish because of mistakes and wasted time. We have numerous projects in the industry that have proved this to be true. He's right when he says a more senior team with proper management could have wrapped up the project sooner. I do agree with that, actually. I'm not. Why did they delay it in the first place? Why didn't it come out last year? I could definitely have seen it coming out 6 months ago in November 2019. I don't know why they delayed it to May. I mean, they're not improving the gameplay at all, I can tell you that much. Sorry to read that in the rest of your thread. We are by no means the best. We want to try to be. Yeah. Hey, wait, what? What? Who is this guy? Whatever, I don't care. I don't care who any of these hacks are. Tweet this while sitting on his cherry red Ferrari. I understand that the working conditions aren't the greatest, but when The Last of Us Part 1 set such a high bar for the story... What bar? Like, I was just like... all these images of better games just ran through my head. Holy shit. So ashamed of you guys. I want to boycott the game, but it's not fair to all the hard work the incredible talent has put in. I'm so conflicted. Nah, ditch it. Yep. Yet there are also these developers, some of whom still work at Naughty Dog today, who say that there's a part of them that actually wishes this game would fail. A critical flap might help show that Naughty Dog that this isn't the best way to make games, that this level of sacrifice isn't necessary, that maybe the project isn't worth... Yeah, I agree with it. Yeah, we have to stand up to Naughty Dog, man. We got to stand up for these poor workers who are being abused by Sony and their management. Give this man a cozy job. No disrespect for your work, but I feel a lot better not supporting The Last of Us Part 2 now. Glad you pushed back. I've been threatened in a similar way and never regretted saying no. Ooh. So it's another... Okay, so it's not... He's not the only one. Like, other employees or former employees are coming up. Yep. Do you think the fidelity and critical acclaim of Naughty Dog games is possible without these practices? Why is everyone talking about the critical? Why is no one talking about the game itself? Like, I talked about it, but all anyone seems to care about is like, oh, the story, oh, the animations, oh, the critical. What about the game itself? No one cares about Naughty Dog as a game developer. No one cares about The Last of Us Part 2 as a video game. Like, no one knows, like, what the new mechanics are, or, like, how Ellie's gonna play differently than Joel. Whether it's gonna be different at all. Oh, it's just, I can't wait to see where the story goes. I can't wait to see these animators. Okay. How exactly are predatory employment practices necessary for making a game? Yeah, people... Let's see. Naughty Dog and Rockstar have the same culture, best developers. The best of what? Rockstar has improved a lot. Jason Schreier has covered it. Yeah, full damage control, by the way. Don't believe anything Jason Schreier prints. I'm going to say that right now. He was probably asked directly by Rockstar to damage control the situation. Oh, it's a lot better now. Just whatever. Jim Sterling. Ooh, I wonder what Jim Sterling has to say about this. Did he block me? No. Okay, so he surprisingly has not blocked me. Thank you for sharing. It's sad to read that a studio I respect so much seems to be such an irresponsible employer. But good working conditions should come first in all cases, delays or not. Game development is labor. Holy shit, Naughty Dog needs to come out and speak on this matter immediately. Well, it looks like I won't be purchasing The Last of Us Part 2. That's abhorrent. Imagine how much you've been brainwashed by the game dev industry when you say 55 hours a week isn't crunching. Yeah, that's 8 hours a day, almost 8 hours a day. Yeah, that's not crunching. They can work 10 hours. They can work 10 days a week. Yeah, so like 100 hours would be double that. So like that would be like what? 14 hours a day, 12 hours a day. Now 12 would be 12 times 7 would be like what? 72. 3 straight full days of the week working, and it's like more than that. Thanks for opening up and sharing. You did the right thing. Take care and congrats on your book. Oh, is this promoting his book? The worst part about this is everyone else complaining about how they have it harder, worse crunch, and more hours. How come everyone puts their hand up in I have it worse competition, but not in the can we all have it fairly one? Yeah, that's right. If that was true, if people really understood crunch, the work hours, like they would be against it. Like nobody, like, oh, I can't wait. Nobody goes like, oh, I can't wait to work 100 hours this week. No, like nobody does that. It's so transparent and it's so easily seen through. Let's see here. Let's see this. Do. Yep. It looks terrible. So definitely. Damn, I'm getting so many likes on my tweets. Oh wow. This is very interesting. All right, so the situation is kind of. Let's see. I decided that keeping up appearances. Let's see. Has he not talked about it at all? Wow, he's probably saving it for a video. All right, whatever. I don't really care what Jim Sterling says about anything, so I just saw him tagged and I was like, let's see if he actually responded. Oh boy. Okay, so after the Kotaku article and the recent developer testimonials on Twitter detailing the work environment at Naughty Dog Studios, I cannot in good conscience support their toxic work practices. No product, no matter how great, is worth sacrificing worker health and well-being. By the way, this is why we need to pull out of China immediately. Bring manufacturing back to the United States. Anyway, it is clear that things need to change in much of the industry in regards to crunch culture, and so I will be carefully considering where my money is spent in order to support developers that do not rely on crunch and avoid supporting ones who do. Last of Us 2 will be the first of many games I am sure I will need to boycott. Yeah, people are like always talking about boycotts and like this this is going to escalate, I think. This is not going away. People don't like the idea of developers being used this way. People are on the side of the developers. This will be my main deciding factor in purchasing games going forward. If you, like me, see this as unacceptable, I urge you to join me in not supporting this practice with your money. Crunch no more. Please feel free to, I guess I could tweet that. Yeah, I will show my support. Naughty Dog. Okay, I am showing my support. Okay, I guess we might as well look at the hashtag before we forget. Let's see. Crush no more. I will not buy The Last of Us 2. Join me. Okay. I support that. I can no longer in good conscience support the practices of the studio relied on to create this game. No game, matter how great. Yep. Yeah, hopefully we get people standing up to it. I'm not sure if it's going to go anywhere, though. Ugh. Well, the important thing is to address the problem and suggest that this is going to affect the quality of the game in the long run. I already said that I don't expect this game to be as well received as the original, so we'll have to see. Please feel free to post studios and games that we know are not made with crunch so we know what we can support. I will do my best to update the OP with the names of studios that say to support. The following studios are studios we know do not rely on crunch. Rare, Insomniac Games, Rare, Valve, Media Molecule. Valve doesn't even put out games. Where is Nintendo in this list? Okay. Sounds good, not buying. Then stop buying almost 80% of AAA games. Yeah, I've done this, okay? I have straight up done this. And you know what? You know what happened after I did that? You know what happened after I did that? My life got better. Like, I'm not even exaggerating. Like, I started playing better games. I started having more fun. I was enjoying myself more. Stopping buying AAA games was one of the best decisions I've ever made. Like, not buying a PS4 was a really good decision on my part. And, So yeah, I definitely encourage you, do not buy AAA games. The game to me looked like shit from the beginning, and I had no interest in buying. Guess I can sprinkle in some light boycott as well at this point. So you are going to reward all their efforts by not buying the game. So it's all for nothing, fair enough. There are better ways to combat crunch culture. Constant pressure from so many media outlets. Governments around the world also have a responsibility too, however, to enforce better working culture through directives and legal measures for all industries. This is a noble cause for sure, but not buying the game actually helping. I think it might be better to start an online campaign against crunch in the industry, rather than not playing the game which staff poured their blood, sweat, and tears into. Well, the game isn't good, so join. Yep. A lot of this. Do not buy and play games. How about we just keep this in the news so the awareness is raised and might actually bring some change? You should include a poll. Yes, after they work their asses off, let's make this game a flop and possibly close the studio. That's going to send a message. Oh, yeah, actually, yes, that would be the ideal solution to this problem. The Kotaku article is already going to cause some pressure, and there's a lot more we can do instead of boycotting other people's work. I think boycotting would help. The issue is, of course, the normies who are going to buy the game anyway, no matter what. Look, we sold all these games to all these people. I won't join, but these situations need to stop, yeah. I'm afraid I cannot join you. This is the game I've been looking forward to for 7 years. Nobody can prevent me from buying it, not even the virus. Ugh. Yeah, that is something I've thought about. Is the coronavirus going to affect the sales of The Last of Us Part 2? How are things going to look 2.5 months from now when this game comes out? Like, are we going to have, like, treatment? Or are things going to get worse? They're not going to get better. I mean, if it reaches the point where people aren't allowed to go out and buy shit, like, it's... there is not going to be a... There is not going to be a... There's not going to be a whole lot of success or hype for The Last of Us. Like, people are going to be living The Last of Us in real life. Like, and then it'll be apparent just how terrible that situation would be and how, like, awful the game actually... Okay, I'm down with this sentiment. I'm sure there is some crunch for all AAA games, but if Kotaku isn't reporting on it, then I don't think it's as bad as it is at Rockstar and Naughty Dog. Time to send a message that this shit ain't cool. I'm sure the developers will be thrilled. Let's see. Time and effort. So yeah, they're making excuses to not go through with it. So yeah, I am going to ask you now. Do not play. The Last of Us Part Two. Don't support it. Don't buy it. Don't talk about it, or unless it's to make fun of it. This is not a game we really need. This is stupid. Let's see. Let's see. So, lots of damage control here. Naughty Dog. Naughty Dog being hacks. Ooh, beer. Oh, dear. It's just people trying to damage control. Okay. Ex Naughty Dog animator. Naughty Dog success is due to large part to Sony's deep. Spawned from Jason's article, but I thought this was threadworthy. The Twitter thread also. Edit. As people have pointed out, there's other reports that tweet in the thread that should be in the OP. Whoa, that's harsh. This thread will surely go well. Dude just painted a target on his back. Hopefully, hopefully people go after Naughty Dog and people don't buy into this propaganda that like, oh, this is perfectly acceptable. It's normal. It's okay. It really, really isn't. And the workers need to rise up to the occasion. They need to really need to really establish how terrible these things actually are. Like, don't let people come on here and try to say like, oh, I work 100-hour weeks every summer. This is nothing. It's a complete joke. Let's see. How does he explain Days Gone then? Let's see. Them's fighting words. I need popcorn. This is gonna go Wellesley. Let's see. I predict he'll tweet this tweet at some point in the near future. Look. Yep. A more senior team would have. Yeah. How does he explain? You do realize that game took over 8 years to make? Days Gone took 8 years to make. Hang on. We are going off track here. Days Gone. Wait a minute. What? 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 Wait. Did it really take 8 years to make? That long? Wait. Did it really take that long for this piece of shit? Let's see. Okay, wait. My first notes on the game are from 2013, so it didn't take 8 years. It took about 6. That's still a pretty long time. It's not 8 years. Okay. It still took way too long, but oof. Guy's coming off like a jackass, throwing his coworkers under the bus. Yep. I don't know. Like, they're not debunking any of his complaints. Like, all they're saying is like, oh, disgruntled ex-employee. Oh, don't trust him. Oh, Naughty Dog is based and red pilled. It's ridiculous. Oof. The rest of his tweet thread is also worth reading. Oops. Dude does not hold back. This in particular is a very bad look for ND. The truth is, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, Naughty Dog is a. I'm not sure if they're going to release a statement on this. I don't think they have released a statement yet. Right now, they're trying to damage control on forums like this. Let's see. Yeah, Naughty Dog really is reaching that point where their reputation as a the best in the industry can't really measure up to the reality of them being a very mediocre, very slow developer. Taking 7 years to make something like The Last of Us, like Resident Evil, came out in when did the original Resident Evil come out? Yeah, 96, right? Resident Evil 4 came out in 2004, 8 years later. Uh, Resident Evil 4. How many great Resident Evil games came out before in that span of time? You got like the original, you got two, you got three, you got Code Veronica, you got Zero, and then you got the Goat 4. And what has Naughty Dog done? They've jack shit. Like Uncharted 4, super overhyped, super boring, super uninspired. Oh, but it's Naughty Dog, so it's really good. One of the best games ever made. Completely forgotten in 2020. Um, the only reason people talk and hype about these games is because they're Naughty Dog games. That's the only way to do it because they're so overhyped among PlayStation fanboys. There's no real substance to them. It's embarrassing. Uncharted is nothing but a poor man's Tomb Raider. Exactly like RDR 2 Crunch Stories. Concern flew out right out the window when reviews hit. Lol. The game was terrible. Like, RDR 2 coming out and getting great reviews didn't really sway people from thinking the game was a piece of shit. Like, RDR 2, the only people defending RDR 2 are people who really, really like the original. That's all there is to it. The game is a disaster. There's no getting around it. Like RDR 2 is the moment I think is when Nintendo proved themselves better at making open world games than the masters of the industry. RDR 2 was not half the game Breath of the Wild was, or even Xenoblade Chronicles X or Xenoblade Chronicles 2. RDR 2 was a complete disaster because of these crunch periods, because of this mismanaged development cycle. Like, it's proven that these sort of tactics make worse games. Why are these people seriously coming out here trying to say that, like, oh, they're suffering for their art? Like, suffering makes the game better. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You cannot put your time and energy into a project when you're as exhausted, right? Like, what they're doing is basically just shoving a bunch of warm bodies to do something that one extremely competent person could do on their own. Like, Breath of the Wild had like what? Far less people working on it than RDR 2, but it had, in the end, a much better game because it had much better focus. It had much better management. Anoma knew what he was doing with that game. And with RDR 2, with The Last of Us Part 2, I don't see it from these developers anymore. I don't see them with any real vision. Their entire purpose is to like politicize everything, make it story driven, strip away the game aspects, make it like have good graphics for the marketing campaigns so people will buy it. It's pathetic. It is absolutely pathetic. Oh, by the way, I own this copy of Berserk Deluxe Edition 4, and I have not unwrapped it yet. I really, really need to get on that, but probably later today. Okay. Let's see. Who exactly are producing games of ND quality that don't have high budgets and long development cycles? I don't know a single dev who could output something of equal quality a year earlier, to be honest. Nintendo? Breath of the Wild was in development. What? It had to enter development after Skyward Sword. I think it entered a little bit before A Link Between Worlds came out. So, like, what? 2013. So it took like what, 4 years to make? 4 to 5 years, I think. I think it was 5 years. So Nintendo regularly puts out better games than The Last of Us Part 2. Because what else has come out in that time frame, right? You have like Splatoon, which was designed in like a year. You have like Animal Crossing. You have like Mario Kart 8. You have like all of this crazy shit, all of which is way better than The Last of Us will ever hope to be. The Last of Us is shit. Like, The Last of Us is... to suggest it's like some premier video game is laughable. Yep. Imagine all that suffering to make an overrated game that wishes it was a movie. The first game was pretty fun, a solid 8 to me, but you'd think they cured cancer with how people talk about it. Oh man. I was hoping he would like shit on it outright instead of saying, "Oh, it's 8 out of 10." It's not even that, to be completely honest with you. Like I see an 8 out of 10 as being something like legitimately good, like playable. Like Last of Us is not that. I do own The Last of Us, by the way. I'm not just I'm not talking out of my ass here. I have played the game. I know it's garbage. All right. Let's see. It's just a bunch of like reset era nerds, spurgs, just going on about. Let's skip to the end here. Um, Time, scope, resources. When one changes, the others have to compensate. Ubisoft just throws more resources at it to counteract scope and keep to the schedule. Yeah. They try to keep him silent with his last paycheck. Wow. Yep. I'm not surprised. Not surprised by that. Oof. 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 You can watch the doc in God of War and see for yourself. A short answer is yes. Yeah, so yeah, God of War went through a similar process. I imagine all major PlayStation studios went through a similar process. The Last Guardian, I'm sure, suffered. Like, you see this all the time. Like, these development cycles, these kinds of games are not practical to make. They're time consuming, they're expensive, they're not even all that good, but people are still bamboozled by the marketing and the ad campaigns and their sheer ignorance of what's actually out there. Because there are better action games than God of War, there are better open world games than RDR2, and there are better zombie games than The Last of Us. Here's a good question for you. What does The Last of Us do better than Resident Evil? Absolutely nothing, right? Like, some people argue the story, but no. The Last of Us' story doesn't suit the gameplay. As a result, it's not a very good game, and you don't care about the story or the characters. The Last of Us, when you get right down to it, it's not a very good movie, and the gameplay just bogs down everything about it. It just, it's embarrassing. It's really, really sad to see people to defend Naughty Dog in this fashion. You can watch the doc in God of War. Let's see. That's really salty. All right. All right. So I think that's everything I wanted to show. Reset Era is damage controlling it. I don't think Naughty Dog has officially responded yet, but that's the reality of the situation. Ooh, definitely interesting. Hang on. Yeah, there are definitely some threads here we can look at here. Naughty Dog is now filled with film animators. Oh yeah, I did bring that up. All right, so let's look at these threads first before signing off for the day. Great stream, guys. Let's see. Never forget. I think we have everything. All right. Death Stranding was a commercial flop. Death Stranding was a flop. It sold well initially, but I've heard it has over 3 million unsold copies of what's been produced. But the sales kind of slowed to a crawl, and the game hasn't done as well as anyone involved has been hoping. 3 million unsold copies. 3 mil. They produced 3 million copies of this shit that they have not sold. Unbelievable. This has to be one of the biggest flops in PlayStation history, and no one is talking about this. If this was a Nintendo game, you would be seeing people talk about it like nonstop, incessantly. Like, oh, remember Death Stranding? What was Nintendo thinking? But oh, when Kojima does it, when he partners with PlayStation and makes an exclusive PlayStation 4 release, oh, that's completely fine. Oh, they can do whatever they want. Oh. Death Stranding was also originally supposed to be a very different game, a lot darker and more horror-esque, but around a year and a half before launch, the development got soft rebooted. Sony and Kojima had some disagreements, and some other studios at Sony's worldwide studios were a bit upset at the money Kojima was getting for the game. Along with disagreements, led to Death Stranding not ending up as a PS5 game and a sharper window for release even after the soft reboot. Okay, so they changed some stuff. I think I suspected this, actually. The entire theme of the game changed during development. Yep. Makes me think the game flopped hard. It's precisely because, let's see, game comes out, it's total garbage, carried only by massive marketing budget, console cucks buy it, PC chads see how shit it is from their screeching in YouTube videos, PC chads don't buy it as a result. I was 100% sure it was going to be a full horror game on the first trailers alone. Really disappointed what they did to it, but I'll always respect Kojima for doing such a weird, fucked up game anyway. Oh, damage control. Damage control. They're always shills. Like, who are these people? Like, every message board, every time these kind of things come up, like, oh, Kojima did a great job. Where is the anger? Where's the rage? This isn't 4chan. It's clearly fake. Like, it's clearly someone trying to push a narrative, and they're everywhere. They are everywhere. It's so frustrating. Yeah, the game looked very weird and creepy. No wonder. So that's the narrative Kojima's going to go with, I think. The game was going to be way different, but Sony made me change it during development. Ridiculous. Ugh. So they're gonna blame Sony, that's what they're going to do. They're going to blame Sony the same way they blamed Konami for everything wrong with PT and Metal Gear Solid 5. It's unbelievable. They're going to try, and Kojima's going to try and make another comeback. Oh, it's gonna be great this time, guys. Unbelievable. I can actually talk about this a bit. Now, keep in my mind, I'm a bit murky on the details. This is far from my understanding also. I'm going to try to get what I've heard as accurate as possible, but I'm also cutting parts of this out. What? Death Stranding was a flop. I'm about ready to say some controversial things for some, so be ready. None of this is from any source I personally can verify, but this is what I've heard. Death Stranding was a flop. It sold well initially, but I've heard it has over 3 million unsold copies of what's been produced. But the sales kind of slowed to a crawl, and the game hasn't done as well as... Let's see... Let's see. All right. So that's interesting if true. Death Stranding, it's a game that people don't talk enough about. That game was a complete disaster, a complete train wreck. Not enough people really acknowledge just how awful it was. Yeah, definitely a lot of things to talk about here. Let's see. Why is Crunch so accepted? Oh, this thread. Oh, damn, I forgot this was a thing. Naughty Dog is the best studio in the world for a reason. It's because they understand if you want to be a champion, you better be willing to make the necessary sacrifices. Blood, sweat, and tears. They know if they don't go the extra mile, someone else will. Damage control. Straight up damage control. Shilling, simping for PlayStation. This is the reality. This is the reality. This is something I realized today looking at these tweets and these messages. These people, these PlayStation fanboys, they're treating PlayStation and their subsidiaries like the way that a simp would treat a woman. Like these endless compliments, these praises, lavishing all these money and attention and praise onto them, even when they don't do shit, even when they're completely worthless. Sony, you're so sexy. Will you touch me, Sony? Will you suck my dick, Sony? Will you let me stick my dick into you? Like that. That is the PlayStation fanboy. They are so desperate. They are so desperate for praise, for attention, for love, that they sort of obsess over this video game company and like defend every action they do, no matter how egregious. It's awful. It is straight up awful. Consumer, did I comment on this one? I guess I didn't. All right. Naughty Dog is now filled with film animators. Yep, I commented on that. Naughty Dog is filled with film people. They're not even hiding the fact anymore that they want to make movies. Am I a fucking retard, or does the best written game ever not even follow its own rules? I had to look this up, but runners turn into stalkers within a week to a month of infection, and stalkers turn into clickers within a year. Bloaters take years to develop after the infected turn into clickers. Who are these giant group of survivors that are just ahead of you over the course of TLOU? I actually never pronounced it out loud before. Shouldn't clickers be the most common infected instead of runners? Wouldn't Billstown be like 100% fucking clickers at this point? Or did a bunch of people move in and all huff the fungus together? Yep, nobody has an answer. Pro tip, pretty much no piece of media is worthy of the awards they win because the people that select the winners are already clueless and not read up. It's just a popularity vote amongst a small group of people that decides winners. That does sum up the gaming industry, at least, very well. I don't think that's true traditionally because, again, I really like a lot of the novels I've been reading that are considered classics, so it's not really a... I don't think it was always like that, but yeah, there's no denying that video game criticism is very, very corrupt, especially when it comes to PlayStation. One thing I've noticed is that the only games that receive awards for writing are either sad, depressing tragedies, or meta, look, I'm using the medium to critique the medium, aren't I so creative commentaries, or both in the case of Spec Ops: The Line. It's as if critics don't think that comedy is a legitimate genre of writing, or that it's possible to make a good story by playing tropes completely straight. Yeah, that is worth talking about. Maybe I'll actually look at a game journalist analysts of these artsy games sometime. That might be interesting. I still have not played Spec Ops: The Line, so I actually don't have an opinion on it. That reminds me, I should probably read the book I know it ripped off from, Heart of Darkness, I think. I should probably get on that. I would love to play Spec Ops: The Line to like make fun of it because I'm sure it doesn't live up to the hype, but I don't know, man. I have a life, man. I talk to like girls. I'm an author. I have like things to do. Like I have to stay safe from coronavirus. Like, I don't have time for Spec Ops: The Line. It's just Bruh, clickers allegedly use echolocation to see, but they're just like any blind enemy that uses hearing. The Last of Us didn't give two shits about its setting and focused on making mediocre character drama. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I really, really wanted to play The Last of Us, is to like point out stupid shit like that. And I think I did in that video I did, like reviewing the first 5 minutes and why like the zombie setup doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And just how terrible that opening sequence was in general. The opening sequence is pretty awful, by the way. But yeah, like things like that. Like enemies don't behave the way they should. People have no reason to act the way they do. Decisions are made that don't make any sense, like narratively. there are a lot of problems with The Last of Us' story, and game critics are so small brained, they're so low IQ that they can't even talk about them. Like, even to bring it up, even to mention it. Like, I'm a huge fan of Harry Potter, right? Like, I'm really liking Berserk too, and I will talk about the flaws I find with those things. Actually, I think my current read through of the Harry Potter books, I'm noticing more flaws than I ever have before. And I think I might talk about that soon. Honestly, a big part of those flaws are politically motivated, so I'm not sure if I should talk about them. But again, this is one of my favorite things ever, right? Harry Potter, and I still find things to complain about, like to notice and acknowledge that yeah, they could have done that better. You don't see that with The Last of Us fanboys. Like you don't see them like bring up like, oh, The Last of Us could have had better puzzles or better combat or better AI. That would lead to a much better game. No, they just declare it a masterpiece and just move on. That's why they're blind fanboys. Like, no matter what the quality of the game is, no matter what it actually is like, they're going to hype it up regardless. Like, despite like the fact that maybe it could have done certain things better, it's embarrassing. I wish Naughty Dog still made games. Yep. Wages. Let's see. The game is written like garbage too, especially in the later half of the game. I'm in a compound run by cannibals and possibly a rapist, and they're cutting up a person to eat. I better break the leader's finger and bite even though he wants me alive, for no reason other than I'm a strong, independent, and fearless girl. It's just baffling the amount of shit they call storytelling. Slip through just because they are dyed hair, limp-wristed fags. And I didn't even mention I was reading this aloud. I wasn't, and I didn't even mention that this is a 13 to 15-year-old girl we are talking about. The argument, but it's the famine. Everyone would be weak. Not these anons. They are hardened men who aren't starving because they'll do anything to survive, including eating people. So the narrative will bend over backwards to protect her. It might as well be a Deus Ex Machina just to keep that retard alive. Ugh. I don't want to defend the game here, but if they actually did use echolocation, you'd have the average console-playing retard crying that the enemies had wall hacks. So that they don't actually use echolocation. I'm going to have to play the game again. I honestly don't remember anything about the gameplay. I really don't. I just know it's terrible. It's been so long since I played it. It's been a long, long time. Ellie getting traumatized by Javen trying to rape her was also retarded. I mean, the little girl grew up in a world full of infected people. People got shot in the street for no reason. Human trafficking, cannibalism, guerrilla warfare. She and her GF contemplated suicide before Riley died due to the fungus. She saw a man shooting his little brother, then himself in the span of 2 minutes. She basically shrugs it all off, but my mean guy, who was obviously a psycho, tried to put his pee-pee against my will, is so traumatizing that all this, she becomes catatonic. Rape is literally the cheapest cliche to achieve my serious drama at this point. Yeah, I do agree with that. I do agree with that. Like there's lots of problems with The Last of Us's narrative, and I would love to go through it all and really talk about it and critique it, but it's not worth my time. Like, it really, really isn't. The most I can do is just say, read a book, motherfucker, and that's really all you need to do. Sadly, for some companies in gaming, it is still all publicity. Yep. Naughty Dog will get to play the good guy card once they decide not to do crunch anymore. Yeah, that is going to happen. It doesn't matter what they do. They're going to be praised and defended for it. The same people who are defending them now are going to praise them for getting rid of the crunch when it does happen. You are going to see that. Game critics are beholden to their politics, big publishers, and strange bedfellows in the indie world. All negativity or positivity is generated by these things. Yes, definitely. All right, so it's been an hour. I actually stopped mid-boss fight in Bayonetta to stream today, so I'm very, very anxious to get back to that. So thank you for tuning in. Really, really enjoyed talking about this situation. Naughty Dog are a bunch of hacks. It needs to be acknowledged that they have no idea what they're doing. Naughty Dog are complete frauds. they're abusing their employees, and it's up to the gamer to stand up to them. It's up to the gamer to rise up and address these situations and call out Naughty Dog and their PlayStation masters for what they've done. Don't buy The Last of Us on May 29th. Stay inside. Stay away from coronavirus. Yeah, yeah. Imagine Naughty Dog releasing The Last of Us Part 2, and it's literally infested with corona. That would be, and it turns you into a zombie. That would be really, yeah, that would be taking immersion to the next level. But anyway, thank you for tuning in. Really enjoyed the stream. Always fun talking trash about Naughty Dog and Sony and PlayStation. And I will see you all next week. Until then, I'm going to sit back, relax, and play some video games. And hopefully get some work done on Rabbit Hole, my upcoming novel. So please look forward to more information on that. And until then, I will see you all next